tell your most embarrassing stories. The winter poop apocalypse. I've got plenty of embarrassing stories, but this one takes the cake. It was last winter, 2023, and I had been battling a nasty case of diarrhea for an entire week. One day, a friend I hadn't seen in ages invited me out. I thought, as long as I don't need to poop, I should be fine. So, I agreed to meet him, hoping for the best. The trip to meet him took about 30 minutes, and as soon as I got on the bus, I felt the ominous rumblings of my stomach. You know, the kind that tells you something catastrophic is about to happen. I clenched my cheeks and prayed I'd make it, but as soon as I got off the bus, I knew I was in trouble. His house was a 15-minute walk from the stop, and I could feel the urgency growing with each step. I started frantically looking around for somewhere to relieve myself, but nothing. The idea of using a random building's entrance crossed my mind, but I didn't know the codes to any of the buildings. I was so desperate that I actually considered doing it right there on the street. Finally, I saw a bench and sat down, hoping I could hold it until I reached my friend's place. But the pressure was unbearable. I got up and continued walking, each step feeling like a ticking time bomb. By the time I reached my friend's place, I knew it was a lost cause. I greeted him quickly, trying to keep my composure, but I could barely focus on what he was saying. I had to leave. I decided to walk back to the bus stop, but my body had other plans. I couldn't hold it any longer, and ended up having a massive accident right there on the bench. My friend, who was talking to me, noticed my discomfort and started asking questions. I snapped at him, unable to hold back my frustration and embarrassment. Eventually, I told him I wasn't feeling well and needed to go home. I got on the tram, my pants filled with diarrhea, and could feel the stares of the people around me. The smell was unbearable, and I was mortified. I finally reached my stop and rushed home, trying to walk quickly without making the situation worse. When I got home, I realized my underwear was a total loss, but miraculously, my pants were mostly clean. I threw the underwear away and vowed never to risk going out with an upset stomach again. It was the most humiliating experience of my life, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. The mailbox mishap. I've always had some pretty wild friends, but this story takes the cake. A few years ago, just before New Year's Eve, we were hanging out far from our usual neighborhood. We wandered into a random courtyard, reminiscing about old times. One of my friends brought up the time I had pooped in a mailbox at another friend's building as a joke. Feeling nostalgic and a bit reckless, I joked, "Let's relive the old days." We went into the building, and I, along with my friend, started breaking into mailboxes in search of toilet paper. We found some discarded paper, and in a feat of immature glee, I took a dump right there in the entrance and wrapped a piece of poop in the paper. I then ran to a mailbox and shoved the mail inside. We were all laughing hysterically until one of my friends pointed out a massive security camera pointed right at us. It was the size of a melon, and I couldn't believe we hadn't noticed it. Panic set in, but we tried to act normal and left the building. 2 days later, the story was all over the local news, and the school buzzed with rumors. My parents found out, and I faced severe consequences at home. The embarrassment was unbearable, and I had to work hard to regain their trust. It was a harsh lesson in the consequences of my actions, and it's a story I won't forget anytime soon. The Great Playground Escape. When I was 10, my neighborhood friends and I, who were around 13, decided to sneak into a closed playground at a nearby kindergarten. The gates were locked, so we had to climb over a fence topped with barbed wire. They managed to convince me to go first. I climbed up, but as I was about to jump down, my shorts got caught on the barbed wire. I hung there, suspended in midair, while my friends doubled over with laughter. I had no idea what was happening and started to panic. They eventually helped me down, and I discovered a huge tear in my shorts. I had to walk home with my underwear partially exposed. Mortified by the experience, it became a running joke among my friends, and every time we passed that playground, they would remind me of my unfortunate encounter with the Finns. Swim team shame. Back when I was about 7, I was part of a swim team, and we had to follow strict routines before and after practice. One day, after a rigorous training session, we were all required to take a shower without our swim trunks on before we could get dressed. I was never comfortable with this, but it was a rule we all had to follow. So there I was, freshly showered, when I walked over to a bench to sit down and put on my swim trunks. As I lowered myself onto the bench, I felt something strange and soft beneath me. I glanced down and, to my horror, realized that I was completely naked. In my haste to get dressed, I had forgotten to put on my trunks. Even worse, 2 girls from the swim team and their coach were standing nearby. Witnessing my naked panic, The moment I realized what was happening, I sprang up and dashed to grab my swim trunks. The two girls started giggling, and I could feel my face burning with embarrassment. The coach tried to keep a straight face, but I could see the amusement in his eyes. I quickly pulled on my trunks, but the damage was done. The image of me sitting naked on that bench was seared into my memory forever. Years later, I can still feel the flush of embarrassment when I think about that moment at the pool. The experience left me hyper-aware of my surroundings whenever I was changing clothes in public. It also became a source of endless jokes among my swim team friends. Every time we had a meet or practice, someone would bring it up, and we'd all laugh about it, even though I was still internally cringing. Eventually, I grew older and moved on from this one team, but the story stuck with me. It became a part of my greatest hits of embarrassing moments that I would share with new friends. Each time I told it, I exaggerated the details a bit more, turning it into a hilarious anecdote that always got laughs, but deep down, it was a reminder of how a single moment of forgetfulness could turn into a lifelong memory. Nicotine nightmare. When I was 14, I went through a phase where I smoked a lot more than I care to admit. One afternoon, after a particularly heavy smoking session, I felt the sudden urgent need to use the bathroom. I ran to the bathroom, but as soon as I stepped into the shower, I knew I wouldn't make it to the toilet in time. I ended up making a mess right there in the shower. Panic set in as I realized I had to clean it up before my parents got home. I quickly scrubbed the shower and tried to wash away any evidence. I thought I had done a decent job, but my older sister came home earlier than expected. She went to use the bathroom and noticed that the shower drain was clogged. She called my mom, who came home and immediately assumed that the neighbor's kids, who sometimes played at our house, had done something to clog the drain. I stayed silent, hoping they wouldn't suspect me. My mom tried to figure out what had happened, considering a few different possibilities, but luckily never directly accused me. To this day, I don't know if they ever figured it out, but I learned a valuable lesson about smoking and its unintended consequences. Now, at 27, I still think back to that day and cringe. My advice: don't smoke too much, or you might find yourself in an equally crappy situation. The aftermath of the clogged shower incident lingered for a while. My mom was adamant about finding out what had caused the blockage, even going so far as to call a plumber to check the pipes. The plumber discovered a mix of hair and other debris, but nothing conclusive that pointed to the real cause of the clog. During the days that followed, I was on edge, constantly worried that my secret would be discovered. My sister kept making jokes about the mysterious clog, and I had to force myself to laugh along, pretending I had no idea what had happened. It was a stressful time, but also a lesson in the consequences of my actions. Looking back, it's almost comical how a simple act of smoking led to such a convoluted situation. I eventually quit smoking, partially because of that incident, and partially because I realized how much it was affecting my health. The memory of that day serves as a reminder of my teenage recklessness and the importance of making better choices. Country chaos. In 2018, I spent some time in the countryside with my family. It was late, and we had all gone to bed. For some reason, I was sharing a bed with my grandma. I was fast asleep when I heard a strange noise and felt a presence nearby. I groggily opened my eyes and saw my brother standing beside the bed, half asleep and looking confused. Before I could ask him what he was doing, he turned towards me, and to my utter disbelief, he started peeing, not just anywhere right in my ear. I screamed, waking up my grandma and the rest of the house. My brother, still half asleep, didn't realize what he had done until everyone started yelling. It was a chaotic and embarrassing moment for both of us, but it became a story we laugh about now, even though it was mortifying at the time. The pee incident, as we came to call it, became a legendary story in our family. My brother, who had been completely unaware of his actions until we all started yelling, was mortified when he realized what he had done. For years, every family gathering included a retelling of that night, much to his embarrassment. Despite the initial shock and disgust, the incident brought us closer as a family. We laughed about it so many times that it eventually lost its sting. My brother and I even developed a running joke about it, and it became one of those shared memories that we could bond over. As I got older, I realized that these embarrassing moments, while painful at the time, often become the stories that we cherish the most. They remind us of our humanity, our imperfections, and the humor that can be found in the most unexpected places. Classroom catastrophe. This one happened just last week and is still fresh in my mind. During a particularly boring class, I was sitting at the back of the room, laughing and joking with a friend. Our teacher, clearly fed up with our antics, moved me to the front row. My friends, not missing a beat, decided to continue messing with me by throwing small paper balls at my back. At first, I tried to ignore it and ask them to stop, but after the second paper ball hit me, I snapped. I turned around and shouted, "You guys are really pissing me off." The entire class went silent, and the teacher's face turned red with anger. She scolded me in front of everyone and gave me a written reprimand. In the moment, it was mortifying, but looking back, it's one of those moments that was so absurd it's almost funny. Now, my friends and I joke about my outburst, but I'm definitely more careful about how I react in class. The aftermath of my outburst in class was both embarrassing and eye-opening. I had to apologize to the teacher and my classmates, and I received detention for a week. My friends, who had been the instigators, felt bad and apologized as well. The incident became a turning point for me, teaching me the importance of keeping my temper in check. Over time, the story of my classroom meltdown became a funny anecdote among my friends. They would tease me about it, but it was all in good fun. I learned to laugh at myself and not take things too seriously. It also made me more aware of my reactions and how they affected those around me. The lesson I took away from that experience was invaluable. It taught me patience, self-control, and the ability to find humor in my mistakes. Now, whenever I'm faced with a frustrating situation, I think back to that day in class and remind myself to stay calm and collected. Thank you for staying with me throughout the video. Dear viewer or listener, please like this video and share your impressions in the comments. Take care and good luck.